From the Mapleview Animal Hospital studios, this is the WHTC Morning News with Gary Stevens and Peg McNichol on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
Welcome back to the WHTC Morning News for this Thursday, April 23rd. Thursday mornings, we have a chance to chat on a regular basis with Representative Bill Huizenga, Congressman from R-Zeeland. He is in Washington in our Zoom connection. And while we could see it in the Zoom connection, Bill is talking to us near the steps of the U.S. Capitol. That's where he is right now because the U.S. House has to vote on what is commonly known, Bill, as Stimulus 3.5. Good morning. I'm glad you're able to join us this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Gary. And sorry, Natalie's trying to call me. Let me text her back here so I can get back to the Zoom. We are out here in Washington. Drove out yesterday to get out here after the Senate had taken action in upping the funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, a very necessary, very popular, very crowded program. It's really, frankly, the largest sort of loan and aid program the U.S. has done in any kind of modern era. And what had started as a $250 billion addition to the $350 billion that had been previously appropriated turned into a $470 billion package. Only in Washington can that happen. But it's $310 billion that is going into the Paycheck Protection Program. There is some additional scrutiny that is going to some of these large institutions. You know, you might have heard about Harvard having a $40 billion endowment, yet they got a Paycheck Protection Program loan. Others have started to return some of that, and that's appropriate. One of the things that you need to attest to is that you have been significantly impacted by the COVID situation. So that's one element. It's also going to make sure that there's some of the smaller banks, there's set aside to make sure that smaller banks and credit unions are a part of that. There's something also called an EIDL loan, and that's an economic disaster injury loan. And that's through the SBA. Those are $60 billion. $50 billion of that will leverage additional loans. So what that means is that banks, as they are making these loans, will have a guarantee from the federal government. That leverage is literally actually hundreds of billions of dollars more, primarily towards small business for those loans. There's also $10 billion in grants for that. $75 billion going to hospitals, additional hospitals. We think that's actually going to hit a lot of rural hospitals this round. And then $25 billion for testing. And that's some of it's test development. There's money going into the NIH and CDC and other organizations like that. There will be money going to states and tribes that have been dealing with the COVID and for testing as well. So it's a big package, but I'm glad it appears that sort of the $25 million for the Kennedy Center and the National Endowment for the Arts and all that kind of stuff that was in the Phase 3 program or bill that we had voted on isn't in this one, and we've got a lot of us looking at that to make sure that that isn't the case.
Do you have a sense that this is just round 4 is going to be coming up shortly, that possibly we're going to need to throw more money at this?
Possibly, but we need to let this settle a little bit as well. We need to let the funds get out, see what the impact is. That was quite honestly some of the hesitation that I and others had about the additional hospital dollars. The first wave of those dollars were actually going out and hitting. And so it did appear that we were going to need some additional, but we weren't sure exactly what that number was going to be. So I'm reasonably comfortable with that. I think that is the right thing, especially as it's geared a little more towards the rural hospitals and those that aren't as as large a system as many of those others in the first go around were. But I think it's going to be a little bit. I hope it's frankly a little bit. We've got to see what the next few weeks brings. You know, in Michigan, that means what's going to be happening with opening up our economy. What does that mean nationally as well? As we've talked about, you know, Maine and Montana and Michigan might have all very different situations and circumstances, and frankly approaches. And that's we've just got to kind of see how this is going to settle. But I'm sure that there will be additional dollars coming at some point as we uncover circumstances that we didn't particularly foresee.
Two things I want to touch base with you on. One that Fred Upton mentioned to us on Tuesday. I'll bring it up to you as well. The House today will be voting on this new stimulus plan, but also Fred mentioned possibly dealing with changes in the House rules so that you and other lawmakers don't have to make a mad dash to Washington to meet, because right now, because of COVID-19, meetings are not regular in Washington.
Well, and they actually, that was a proposal that Speaker Pelosi had originally said she wanted to be a bipartisan proposal. Unfortunately, they had gone down the road without it being a bipartisan proposal at all. And she was discovering that she was getting a lot of pushback even within her own caucus. So they pulled that bill. And I think that is the right thing to do. And look, Gary, you know, I've got my mask here for when I've got to go into the building in a little while. A little later today. We've got people that are on the front lines all around the country, whether they are food processors, delivery folks, people working at banks, people working in all these areas that are really essential to our economy and to, frankly, us being able to survive. I mean, can you imagine what this would be like if the electric plants weren't working and power plants weren't working and those kinds of things? Gas stations. We can do this. We should do this. We can do this safely. It doesn't mean we have to necessarily be here every week, because frankly, that's been one of my frustrations. Is we've spent a lot of weeks here naming post offices and doing things that frankly were not all that productive. So if we can save it a little bit, so that we're not unnecessarily putting staff and others and Capitol Hill security and all those folks that are here at needless risk, great. Let's come less frequent, be more intentional when we are here. We can do it safely, and frankly, we should, because we're spending billions of dollars. This isn't just our current tax dollars. This is future tax revenue. This is trillions of dollars so far. We're knocking on the door of over $3 trillion that has been allocated. And it's the right thing to do, frankly, I think, to be out here and working.
Now, the other point is what we saw in Michigan with on Tuesday, I believe, was when Governor Whitmer said there was going to be cuts with the state staff, the state operations. We've seen cuts in the Attorney General's office. What about Congress, your office? How has that been impacted in terms of maybe having to make some tough decisions with your staff and with your revenue? Some are saying, well, maybe some Congress people should be giving their money back in order to try to help the financial situation, because, as you mentioned, a lot of this money is going, we're spending money for the future now to deal with the situation.
Yeah, and taking what the federal government's doing and what the state government's doing, the state government has a very important thing that, frankly, I have been pushing for that the federal government doesn't, which is a balanced budget amendment in the state constitution. So it is the necessary thing to do as you are looking at revenue shortfalls at the state level. Federal level, I am completely open to that conversation as well, because, you know, frankly, this is the time that we need to look at how we efficiently use all of those tax revenues and how we are spending them. So whether it's in particular departments or the Congress itself, I know that in my earlier years we had implemented cuts, and so there has been less that has been going into the U.S. House over the last 10 years and the growth than there had been previous, but everyone ought to be feeling this pain.
But it's not right now in this situation in your office. No cuts yet, has there been?
No, at this point, Gary, we've got the allocation for the year that is going on, and honestly, the work that our staff is doing, and I just want to give a shout out to Presley, especially. We've kept our Granville office staffed at a skeleton crew, and we do a rotation of people coming in. Presley is there on a daily basis. And frankly, it's been very productive to be able to have a place where people can call. And we get calls every single day about, I can't get somebody at the local government level or at the state government level to answer my call. And we're trying to triage those circumstances. We're dialoguing directly in with state reps and state senators when we need to, or other state departments, local government, all those things. So, the staff has been doing a great job working remotely and continuing to serve the people of the 2nd District.
He is U.S. House Representative Bill Huizenga. Zoom conversation from the steps of the Capitol in Washington, where he is about ready to vote a little bit later on today on the latest stimulus package. Bill, we appreciate the time that you spend not only today but throughout on a week-by-week basis. Let's hope we can do this all again next Thursday morning. Thank you, sir.
You got it. Thanks, Gary. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. That is Bill Huizenga, the Congressman from Zeeland, on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.